is 612-804-0295. I cannot tell you how grateful we are for your donation. Please take the time and check out the website and feel free to donate to this wonderful service that Temple Afrique continues to offer us abroad and at home. All this information is on the website. Just go to templeafriquetv.com and you will get more information. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. My name is Bolo, and thank you for joining me here today with our live. We'll be going live on Facebook as well. Today, I'm here to present a topic on African American story in the United States. I am a nurse practitioner. I am from Senegal, and I am a founder of a nonprofit organization, Cellal Africa, that provides health for women and children in Africa with medical trips every 2 years. And also, I am using my credentials and my voice to help fight health disparities and social and racial disparities. Here, today I am joined by Brandon Royce Job. He'll introduce himself in a bit, and Malik Jai and Henry Hayne. We were supposed to have also Brian Wara. Unfortunately, Brian has an emergency that is not allowing him to join us today, but hopefully next time. So we will go around the table. I mean, Brandon is here, and we'll go around and have everybody introduce themselves first, and then we'll keep going. Thank you so much. Brandon, I would like for you to introduce yourself, please.
Definitely. Thank you, Bolo. And greetings to everyone watching. Peace to everyone watching. Good afternoon. My name is Brandon Royce Diop. I am Senegalese American, born in South Minneapolis, where we are located right now. Born and raised here. And I currently do a lot of work in education to address
greetings to everyone watching.
Racial disparities in education, and to advance equity. And it's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you, Brandon. We'll move on to Malik. We'll come back to you, Brandon. Very nice background. Malik Jai, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Oh, yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Malik Jai. Senegalese, that's how I'm going to put it. I wasn't born here. I came here in 2000. Actually, 2 days apart. Bolo came 2 days later. I came, so that was back in 2000. And I've pursued education here, and have a family now. But then, education-wise, I went to IUPUI and obtained a master's in linguistics and editing, and then after that, later on, I pursued a PhD, which is in public policy and administration. So that's it. That's me.
Thank you, Malik. I remember those days of us being first timers in America. That's another topic. Henry, would you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Bolo. Yes, my name is Henry Hayne, also Senegalese American. And just like Malik, I also came to this country in 2001, and I've been here since then, married with 4 children, and I currently reside here in Ohio, and went to IUPUI as well for my master's and also my PhD as well. I'm in the latter stages of that, and yes, so here I am.
Thank you so much, Henry, and it's very nice to have and an honor to have all of you guys here. And I appreciate you two joining in last minute because we don't have Brian, who also is a brilliant young African American, originally from Cameroon, who was supposed to be with us. So now we're gonna go on to the questions that we're gonna have. And before we go there, I would like to thank everyone who helped me celebrate my birthday yesterday. And also I would like to help all of those who helped me raise money for women's health in Senegal, and those who bought my body cream and gave me great reviews. And I really appreciate it, and I'll give you more in days to come. So without a further delay, we're gonna move on to the questions. I'm gonna be looking at my phone from time to time. I'm going live right now, and it's gonna be live on my Facebook. Please, if you want, share it on your page or share it with friends. And we would like for everyone who wants to comment or participate to use the comment button to comment or to call. The number would be provided at Tampo TV, or I will add the phone number on the comments shortly. So I'm just going to pull out the questions here. We'll start with Brandon. You already introduced yourself as African American with Senegalese roots. Brandon, what made you Senegalese roots? What can you tell us about your roots in Senegal? You're African American. You're born here. Mm-hmm. What made you African American of Senegalese roots?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's important for all people, especially Black people around the world, to recognize our roots in Africa. I happen to be fortunate, blessed, and privileged to know my roots. And many of us in around the world, Black people, don't have that privilege, and because our histories were interrupted, so to speak, by this transatlantic slave trade that separated us in many ways from our roots. But we are still connected and can be connected when we identify with that connection. And so I choose to identify with my Senegalese heritage because it's a point of pride for me. It's a point of, it's a source of strength, mm-hmm. A source of ancestral strength that without, I wouldn't be who I am today.
That's true. Thank you.
At the same point, I also identify as Black. You know, for me, the question of identity and who gets to choose my identity has to be grounded in myself. And so I identify as Senegalese American, African American, as well as Black. I think Black and Blackness is a political identifier marker. And I identify with the Black experience in America in many ways by choice, and in many ways as the experience of being Black in America is done onto me and performed onto me mm-hmm. in other ways. And so I accept all that comes with that experience, and is also a source of strength and pride.
Mm-hmm. Brian, I know that your mom is American and white, and your dad is Senegalese, obviously Black. So do you identify more as Black, even though you have mom, like half of your blood that's white? Is that because not just your appearance, or is it because of the society not seeing the whiteness of yourself, or just you identifying as a Black person?
Mm-hmm. Well, in my life as a Black man in America, or a Black boy in America, raised by a largely white family, there was a point that I can remember identifying more with white culture, white people, whiteness. But that experience for me was cut once I was seen less of a Black boy and grew largely or more into a growing younger black man, and with that comes a different perspective that society has on me, and a different understanding of my place within that society. And so you either are going to choose to, like I kind of in my introduction, be done onto in terms of stereotypes, in terms of people's expectations for you, societal expectations for you, historical tropes, or are you going to take that and make it into a part of who you are and define for yourself what that means? Mm-hmm. And so for me, I never identified as white. I cannot identify as white in this country. I'm not viewed that way. And so the part of it is me grappling with my place in this American world, and the other part of it is deciding for myself who I am, right? And so I embrace wholeheartedly my blackness. I don't reject my white my white familial background or that whiteness that is within me, but more so I think about what white supremacy culture is, and I choose not to affiliate with that form of culture. And so that's how I would go about answering that. Mm-hmm. And that's how I think my understanding of myself and how I identify has evolved over time.
Okay. One more question before we move on. I know your experience can be a little bit different than the other two or some other people who are identified as black. You have a white mom who raised you since you were born, and what point in your life or your childhood did you realize that you are not white, or you are not just black, or you cannot identify as white? At what point in your life did that click to your head, and what made that click?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have a point in my memory where there was a time or a situation or a moment. There are a series of experiences throughout my life that shaped the way that I identify and my experience. Some of those things had to do with, I do recall being called the N-word in a small town in Austin where my cousin lives. My cousin who is white, and her family who is white, on that white side of my family. I think I was about 7 years old, and that was, I knew what that meant, and that was the first time where I had really been slapped with that kind of hate, mm-hmm. And made me further distinguish myself from that environment, mm-hmm. And the hate that can come from identifying with whiteness and with being white. And so I can recall that, and there are other instances that I could describe or outline, or maybe I'll talk about later, with law enforcement, friends, acquaintances, people in general, society at large, that further prompt me to make choices about how I separate myself from whiteness as I understand it, as I conceive it, as I define that. And so I also believe that whiteness was a creation. Whiteness was designed to make people of European descent choose a side, right? When we talk about history and the way that people began to identify as white, it was that Italians identified as Italians, Polish identified as Polish, Irish as Irish. But when folks started to when the government and other folks started to realize that people coalesced around building blocks towards economic sustainability and development, there had to be something else. And that something else was whiteness. And people embraced that as a way to divide. And so that type of division, or that mentality of division, which is what whiteness is rooted in, is something that I can't subscribe to, and it's something that is a part of my understanding of this world.
Okay, thank you, Brian. And once again, I'm sorry about your experience of being called the N-word when you were only 7 years old, to be slapped that this is what you are. I know that it's not all white people that are like that. There are great white people who do not feed into that or don't look at themselves as different. But you know, the ones that do are the ones that made you and many other people feel that way and to dissociate. Once again, going back to the topic, it's about, because it seems like African Americans, I mean, by that I mean black men who live in America, are kind of like species in danger, because as we all know, there are so many incidences where they're just being incarcerated or being killed left and right. And unfortunately, everybody that's part of this movement to change how things are trying to help protect the black Americans, men. And everybody is talking about it, everybody is doing something, but I feel like the African American males have not been heard. They're just so reserved and so scared and so, you know, so isolated that nobody knows what they're thinking, nobody knows what they're going through. And this is the opportunity for all of those people who don't understand it, all of those people who want to know, or those people who wants to help, to hear from these African American men and to see this side of the story. Now we're going to move on to, Brian, we'll come back to you. We're going to move on to Malik. Malik, can you answer that question, please? Do you consider yourself as African American, or in what way and why?
Well, okay. First of all, I think this. I generally don't like hyphens. You know, you are usually what you feel like deep down you are. You know, the way that people are using these hyphens now in America, it's just kind of telling. It's so meaning charged. Where you know, it's, you're not just African, or I mean, you're not just American, but you have to be something else. You know, you have to be African American or Puerto Rican, whatever, or Mexican American, and things like that. I've never liked that. So, and you know, to tell you the truth, I think it's very complex. It's like the issue of culture. To say that, I mean, that's why, you know, in linguistics you don't talk about culture, you talk about cultures, right? You know, so somebody, you know, I could say deep down that I am Senegalese. I am Senegalese. I'm not even going to say I'm African, because, you know, that's another discussion. I'm not African Senegalese. I'm not just African, because, you know, Africa as a, I guess, just a nation does not exist. It's like different nations. So, you know, I'll say I'm Senegalese living in America. Now, practical terms, yes, of course. I mean, I have all these things in the nationality and things like that. So, in that sense, you can say that I'm Senegalese American. You know, that's just how I feel.
Okay. Part of that question, Malik, is that, for instance, if you are, I mean, within yourself, your identity, you are Senegalese living in America, you are Senegalese American, as you said it. But when you get outside of your house, somebody who's looking at you may not see you as a Senegalese American. And you may have they may see you just as a black man, and you may have the same treatment or same experience as the other African Americans or the black men that are all put in the same box. So that's part of the question. Like, in what way do you identify with that group? You know, as a black male who's outside of your house.
No, I mean, I understand. I understand. You know, I just have issue with African American. You know, but I am black, and I embrace that, and I like it. You know, when I go out, I'm a black man in America. You know, just like everyone. You know, Henry would be. You know, Brian would be. You know, that's just the way it is.
Brandon,
And,
sorry, I because we had Brian who was coming too, so I am the one who started it. It's Brandon.
okay, so all right, so we are just like Brandon, just like Henry. When I walk out of my door, I'm African. I mean, I'm black. I'm black in America. That's just how it is. That's our experiences may differ to a certain point, but basically, in the eyes of the in group, it's just the same thing. It's just black people in America. You know, that's just my take on this thing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Malik. Henry, can you answer the same questions? Do you consider yourself African American, and in what way do you identify with that name?
Thank you, Bolo. The black identity in America has always been a hot topic for various reasons, because identifiers are seen as what differentiate people from the dominant group. So it depends on the sense that African American is taken. If African American means a black man living in America, yes. But in the sense, of black folks who are descendant of American chattel slavery, then I would say no. But I'm a Senegalese who is naturalized American. Therefore, I would say yes. I identify myself as a black male or black American male as opposed to a white American male. So in that sense, absolutely, I do identify myself as a black American or a black man living in America.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, it's more like we all have our own self-identity. Like Brandon said, he views himself as in a certain way, regardless of what it says outside, and you guys do too. But in many cases, when you're outside of your house, you're black man, you're black man. The prejudice, the everything that goes with it, and the negativity, you are a black man. So thank you all for answering that question, and we are going to move on to the next one. I'm going to start with you, Brandon. How do you feel about the way the African American males have been treated here in the United States, and how does it make you feel personally as a black man in America?
Well, I think that black men in this country have always there's always been an intention to keep us in our place or below our place, as less than, whether that be less than human, or less than a father, or less than a husband, or less than a contributor to our society. And in many ways, Bola, I heard in your last piece kind of a question about where the black male voice is, and I think that if we really look into the different forms of art and of whether that be hip hop, literature, visual art, we can find it. There are many ways that black men have articulated ourselves over time through art, and often it's not taken as seriously or as real as other forms of protest or of articulation. And so I bring that up just to say that, I think that there's always been attempts to silence and reduce us, because a black man is a very powerful entity, as is a black woman in this world. And it is fear, I've come to learn and understand that it's fear and ignorance that really have driven that desire to keep down. Beyond that, there is an economic incentive to maintain black men in a position of inferiority. So as long as there is economic, and we're starting to kind of see that flip, which is very interesting, right? In this time after George Floyd's murder, we're seeing now that blackness and people of color and those who once were viewed as different or less than, we see companies now investing in commercials and football teams that are changing their names that they should have changed, 100 years ago. And I think there is now an economic incentive to invest in a different way the idea of blackness and what that means. So if you can make money off of it, we will bring it up and raise it up. But if if not, we're going to push down. And so I've always felt that pressure. And I come from a middle class background, and recognizing that privilege within myself, that's a part of my experience within America that other black males or other black men have not experienced or do not have the privilege behind them in terms of their history. And so I've always felt out of place in this country. I've always felt that there was an invisible foot that is trying to keep me down, and it shows up in different ways. And for me, coming to grips with what that means with my interactions and my relationships with those that I had or do consider to be white friends, and it shows up in different ways, in subtle ways. And so how that impacts me, kind of to your second question, or the second piece of your question, is it has really made me question everything around me. So every time that I am moving in our society outside of my house, and sometimes even inside my house in my mind, I'm questioning who is who, and who might have my interest at heart, and who does not, and in what ways does their body language show me, in what ways does their language that they're using with me show me. And so there's a constant kind of a puzzle that I feel like I'm living to solve, that I don't and I shouldn't need to, right? It's a puzzle against my will, that is something that some of my friends who've actually moved out of Minnesota recently over the last couple of years have told me that they have done away with, they haven't needed to, because a lot of the ways that people interact down south, in Texas for instance, there's a very clear, if I don't like you, I'm going to tell you that. Here in Minnesota, it's a little different. It's a little more of a puzzle that we live with and deal with. The Minnesota nice that we talk about. Minnesota nice is not nice at all. Minnesota nice is a backwards, kind of a backstabbing way of smiling and then doing business as usual behind closed doors. And so how does that make me feel? Burdened, burden is a good way to put it. And once I grappled with kind of the rage that I have because of living that way, and the anger, it comes to a place of being burdened, but now trying to figure out a way to be productive. And so that's kind of where my life has taken me, and that's why I do what I do in education. I'm sure we'll get to some of those questions later, but I appreciate that question. Yeah, great answers too, and it's very deep what you just said. Burden. It's a burden that you carry throughout your life, trying to solve that piece of puzzle, thinking who has the best interests, my best interests in mind, and who's not, and not being able to know. That's what many black men experience in this country, unfortunately. And that's what we want to know. That's what, this show is about. And people who are listening, that's what they need to know too. Many people want to do something about this, and they need to know from the right person, which is a black man.
we're going to ask the same question to Malik. Malik, can you tell us how do you feel about the treatment of African American males in the United States, and how does it affect you personally? How does it make you feel?
Oh, well, I mean, it affects me like in such a deep way. But then, like, I'm not really surprised. I'm not really surprised when you consider the history of the United States. It's something that has always been there, even before black people. I mean, black people have been suffering from it for centuries and centuries, because it's like cyclical. It comes, I mean, it was slavery before, and then after slavery, it was segregation, and then now it's another kind of mistreatment, which is more insidious. You don't actually, I mean, you see it, from time to time, but it's like black people don't even exist sometimes. It's like what those invisibility writers were saying, like Franz Fanon and Baldwin, where the black man basically, in their eyes, does not exist. When you look at that, I'm not going to say unfortunate, but that terrible, terrible George Floyd experience, where the guy is standing on his neck like he's not even there. He's so, I mean, like seeing that, knowing that I am one of those I mean, I walk out here every day, and it could happen to me. I have kids, and it could happen to them. So of course, it affects me. It affects me at a certain level that I'm not even able to describe. Like Brandon did. I'm just going to piggyback on what he said. But these things, I mean, this is the history of the United States. History of the United States is like that. It's violence targeted certain people, which comes like every so often, cyclically. In 1798, it was like the Alien and Sedition Acts, where different type of group were targeted. Where it was allowing the government to deport people who they thought were not suitable. I mean, African Americans, they cannot deport everybody. They cannot deport them. They have to make do with them. But the way they do that is basically try to deny even their existence. When you want something, you can't have it. It doesn't matter what you do. It's just like you just get to a certain level where you cannot actually go past that. That glass roof that they're talking about, we never reach it. I mean, it's left to them who are never going to reach it. And then after that, we had like 1917, what they call the Palmer Raids. They have 1918, like Sedition Act. 1941, FDR was interning all these like Japanese. But then for black people, it's different. Black people, it seems like it never goes away. All these people that I was talking about, the red menace, the green menace, like all of that, it kind of comes and goes. But for black people, they were at this point. And then, they try to reinvent whatever bad things were happening to black people by saying, okay, well, now you're free. So after slavery, you say, well, you're free. But you're free. I mean, this is just like, and I'm putting that in quotes. You're free, but you're not really free to do anything. And then, they reinvented that by bringing on segregation, and now it's reinvented where, okay, well, black people, you're free to do this, you're free to go where you want, you're free to go to school. But then, when you do all of that, there's now another kind of like more insidious, something that you cannot see, but it's even worse. Polo, you're going to appreciate this because you are in healthcare, but it's like a cancer that's like gnawing from inside. You cannot really see it. And then you think you can touch something, or you think you can achieve it. You go to school, they tell you, okay, do this. When you do that, then you can get this and this and that. You can get A and B, but you never can as a black man. So I totally understand what Brandon is saying, and I totally like faced with that. So.
Yeah, very, very thorough explanation, Malik. Definitely. And for those who are listening, if you want to participate, you can call the number which is on the screen, or you can comment. We would like to hear from you or to get your questions. Henry, what do you think of those couple of questions? What do you think of the African American male's treatments here in the United States, and how does it make you feel?
That's a very good question, Bolo. There is a little bit of a description that I want to give to kind of help us understand the situation or the conditions under which or in which Black folks find themselves in the United States. As a Black male, I basically have experiences that no one else outside of me can understand as a Black male. But there are also two different types of experiences as far as I'm concerned, and I think it's important to understand that, because Malik just outlined here what we call the covert racism as opposed to overt racism. So you have, first of all, a group that has been they have been subjected to wrongs for centuries, like he said. They have been subjected to wrongs for centuries in a country they basically built from scratch to what it is today. And those wrongs have never been rectified. So the experiences as Black folks is going to be a little bit different from my experiences as a Black male. But as a Black male, my experience also extends to all Black folks that are in the United States, because when I walk out of my house, like Malik said, the police officer, not all of them, but there are some police officers who are basically part of a systemic issue that as Black folks we are faced with. When they make that decision that I may effectively be dealt with, they are not going to wait to find out whether I am a Black male from a certain country or a certain geographical location to help them make a decision whether they can pull the trigger or not. They see the Black male, that racism that is ingrained in them, that is the insidious one that Malik was talking about. That's not easy to see because it's like cancer. It gnaws from inside, that we call microaggressions, or that we call covert racism, or that we call systemically ingrained racism within people who are different from people of Black color. Definitely, it is something that people need to understand how it affects people. Whether we know it or not, it does affect us, whether it's psychologically, whether it is physically, or whether it is emotionally. It does affect me as a Black person living in America, because you never know who you are going to come in contact with, and how that person is socialized to see you as a Black man, whether they're going to see you as the stereotypical threat to their safety or something, right? So yes, in that sense, it does affect me as a Black person living in America.
Can I piggyback off of that?
Yeah.
Bolo, thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate what both of you are saying, because and until recently, until Dr. Ibrahim Kandi, who's the author of a number of books, but until I really listened to and started reading what he was saying, I was focused. Years ago, I was more focused on the overt experience that I had with overt racism. Someone calling you an N-word, not being able to get a loan because you are Black. But I want to talk more about that second piece, because it's connected to the idea that, interpersonal racism is a problem, right? It's hard to understand. It's hard to deal with. It is a problem. It is provocative. It is inciting, and it is rooted in something. Now, what that something is rooted in, Dr. Kandi says, is self-interest. And self-interest is exhibited in public policy. And so as a younger person, I would think, well, racist attitudes are what form and formulate our public policy. But what he's saying is that actually the policies and the self-interest rooted within those policies contribute and produce negative racist attitudes. And so I think that we've got to understand, right, that the root of our nation and the root of racism within our nation is self-interest, and is economic, and is rooted in our policies. And once we can understand that, we can start to see what prison is. And to your point, Malik, we can start to see what is the prison industrial complex. How is money made off of our backs, off of the idea of criminalization? Mm-hmm. we're free, but 13th Amendment says you are only free unless you have committed a felony, unless you are indeed a criminal. And so the way that we have been policed over time, and the way that these policies, for everything from the difference between the punishment for having cocaine versus crack cocaine is a prime example of a policy that is designed to imprison a very specific population, right? So I just wanted to name that as something that I feel like you all highlighted, but I wanted to kind of give some context from my understanding and my personal education as of late.
Yes, great insight to all of you gentlemen. And I completely agree with you all, and I think like Brandon said, and you too, Henry and Malik, I think this is designed from the fabric. You know, it's hard to see, it's hard to visualize, you know, what you all have been feeling. You can't touch it, you can't see it, because it's part of the fabric, it's part of the air we breathe, it's part of the everyday life. Whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's looking for a job, whether it's everyday social, it's in everything that is kind of like invisible to just, you know, going beyond our understanding. So yes, it's going to take a lot to fight this. It's going to take a lot to take it away, because like Brandon said, it's economic, it's privilege. So it's hard to get to get rid of your privilege, you know, like to fix something when it's helping you in many ways be privileged. And privilege is hard to get rid of, to let go of for so many. And I know so many white people that don't care about the privilege, and they care more about the human rights, they care more about the equality. But there are so many others that care more about the privilege and want to hold on to it. Yeah, and in that note, also I would like to point out that we talked about the African Americans, and we have to all give African American males the credits that their forefathers have done, the work that they have done for us to be able to be here. Because if it wasn't for Martin Luther King and all of those activists that were there and trying to get the freedom to be here, the freedom to have a job, or the freedom to exist here, I don't think we Black African would be here today. That's why they have fought the fight for all of us, and that's why we are all in this together. That's why we have to, you know, we may be different culturally, but we all have the same interests of being free, just to be able to live, just to be able to do the everyday life that everybody else is entitled to do. So now we're gonna move on to the next question. Sorry, it's on my phone. And Brian, I think you already told, Brandon, kill me. Brandon, you already told us about your experience when you were 7 years old with racism. And the next question is kind of like, you know, echo. I mean, after that point, is there any other points in your life where you have experienced prejudice, you know, or racism as a Black man? And can you tell us about that? And I know you have told pieces that can echo to that, but is there any specific example that you have that you can share with us?
Well, I've been arrested 3 times, and I would say that in none of those instances was I arrested for was my arrest just. And all situations involve white police officers. In all situations, and let me be clear, I don't think that all white people are bad. But the way that I speak about whiteness will sometimes make it sound that way, but that's not my belief, because I believe that anyone can enact those cultural practices that are rooted in white supremacy. So I just want to say that. But in all three of my arrests, well, the first time I was arrested, I was 20 years old. I was standing outside of a club in Minneapolis, downtown Minneapolis. And I had been waiting in line, and I haven't told this story publicly ever, so this is very interesting. I've been waiting in line with my friend Ben. We're the only two black folks in line. That should have been a reminder or a trigger for us that maybe this isn't the place that we need to be. But you know, I was raised by a white mom, and my mother taught me to question everything and to show up and create space where you're not necessarily that weren't necessarily designed for you, and to carve out parts of that space. Now, if I would have been raised by a black man or a black woman, that might not have been the message, but that was my message. And I appreciate actually growing up in that way. But so we were standing in line. The line that night was all the way down, kind of around the block. And, you know, the bouncer had come and checked us out all the way throughout the hour that we were waiting in line. We finally get to the front, and, you know, we're wearing our nicest Timberland boots, the suede nice boots. We see people right in front of us walking in, white people walking in with sandals on, Doc Martens, which are also a work boot. But that's kind of the white boot at the time, you know, and Timberlands were more the, you know, associated with blackness and the hood, right? New York, Bronx, whatever, Brooklyn. So we get to the front of the line, and we're watching all these people kind of coming in from the VIP rope with these, you know, basically nothing on their feet. And we get to the front, and we're told that we can't come in because we're wearing work boots. And of course, I had questions about that. And so I asked, well, what do you mean by that? Are Timberlands different than Doc Martens? In what ways are those boots different than my boots? Or is it me that you have an issue with, right? And so eventually I demand to see the owner or the manager, who wasn't there. And I decided I wasn't gonna leave the line until I spoke to someone who gave me an answer that satisfied me, right? And so they asked the police, who were kind of in the area around the street, to come and take care of me, to move me off the property. So I stepped onto the street, began having a conversation with the officer, kind of demanding explanation. And, you know, he told me what I didn't know at the time, but which is true, which is that any institution, any private institution, can decline services, or business can decline services to anyone that they feel like declining service to. And that upset me. I said, well, you know, that's wrong, right? Like that's not right, because I feel like I was kicked out of the line, not because of what I was wearing, but who I am, color of my skin. And we exchanged a few more words, and he ended up arresting me, put me in the back of the car, put my friend in the back of the car who hadn't said anything up to that point. And so, you know, we were arrested for inciting a riot. And so, you know, that's just an example, right, of the ways that the system can exclude. And then what that exclusion did to me was created a sense of anger, right, of rage. I didn't express that, right, because I knew better. And that's another issue, right? I knew better than to express any sort of a rage or any sort of anger that I was feeling to anyone in a position of power like that. But doing so landed me in jail. A couple other situations like that throughout my life put me in that position. But really, that, you know, those situations for me were a symptom of the problem, right? Those are symptoms, and those were things that, looking back, are minor compared to what larger, the way the system works in larger ways, right? And so when I start to kind of look beyond my personal experience with interpersonal racism, I start to see and understand that it's connected to something much, much bigger. And that's the piece that I've spent a lot of time trying to understand and trying to break down. And I think that's the piece that a lot of others in this moment, in this kind of this time of redefinition after George Floyd's murder and heinous murder, that is where people are at. We're starting to see the ways that the system works.
Right.
We're starting to recognize that the symptoms are a branch out of this tree that has such deep roots in hate and oppression. And where does capitalism play into that? I'm not against capitalism, but I do think that when you engage in a mindset of capitalism and money first mentality, that you
Nothing
subject
else matters.
yourself and others to that system. You're more open to being eaten up by that system, and then showing the symptoms of that pandemic. We can call it a pandemic as well.
Yeah. That's yes, that's pretty much, it's very common, the experience that you had is very common in many African American males. And oops, sorry, I pulled my, okay. So it's very common in African American males to get that experience, and it's very interesting that how you said what your mom taught you, your mom who's a white female who taught you to question everything, which may be different than what a black mom would, or black dad would teach their child, son, when they're getting out of the house, what they should do. I don't think a black mom would tell their young son when they get outside, question everything. They want to tell them, be polite, say yes ma'am, say yes sir, come back home safe. But your mom doesn't have that experience growing up. She's a white woman who is raising, maybe, I don't know what's in her mind, but maybe she was just thinking that I'm just raising my child. I'm a white person, and without even thinking, it's her culture, and this is the way it should be, right? Because she should not expect that you're gonna have that experience like that black mom would think about the minute they were pregnant. They were thinking about, how am I gonna teach my son to be outside in the world and be safe? And comparing to that, I said that example before. My husband, who's an African American male, who was raised by both parents African Americans, he learned to lower his tone when he's talking to certain people. He learns to show politeness when he's talking to certain people, because that's what he's taught. That's what he's told, that is going to keep you safe. Is going to probably bring you back home alive. So yes, and different perspective, and unfortunately what the black mom was trying to avoid, you had to experience that to be able to know. And I know your mom, she's a great person, and she's a great activist, and fighting for the rights for black men and for anybody. So I would ask her that question. If she knew what she knows now, how would she do it? Okay, so let's move on to Malik. We may not have so much time left right now. Malik, the same question is coming to you. Do you have any experience of racism or prejudice that was put upon you? And tell us about the experience, and how did that affect you?
Oh, where should I start? It's just, but I'm just joking here right now. But okay, it's everywhere, Polo. My experience, basically, usually it's more in academia and things like that, where the covert, what I'm saying, the covert problems that I was talking about earlier, where, basically, you just know it's there, and it affects you to a certain point where you actually have to change a lot in your life. We're talking about right now, where when you get out, how you walk, how you talk, and how you conduct yourself. It's all this is because it's it's the situation, because you're a black man. You are supposed to be actually. I am extra careful now, about things. when I walk out, when I'm driving, when I'm doing all that. So it is affecting me. It is affecting me, like to a point where you're not even actually yourself, because you have to keep in mind that, like you may not come back. If you have maybe you would just stop for a traffic sign or something like that. There's a good chance that things are going to escalate. Things like that. So it just affects it affects me in my everyday life. I try to not think about it, but I know it does. It does affect me. So I'm not going to actually just get into any details. But if you're a black man and you live here in America, it does affect you.
That's true. Yes, you're definitely right, Malik, and thank you for sharing that. Henry, do you have any experience, personal, and if there is any, how did that make you feel or affect you?
So, as far as experience with racism is concerned, every black person wakes up, there's no way that any black person would wake up a day without encountering a racist action or attitude or racism. That's impossible. It might sound exaggerated or a bold statement, but this is a statement that I stand by because of the coveredness of racism, especially systemic racism. But if I were to give an example of a overt racism that I can give an incident, for instance, where I bought an electronic item from a retail store. When I got home, it was a defective item. When I took it back to the store, and I gave it back and I said, it doesn't work, can I make an exchange or return it for my money back? I was told, well, they scanned the item and the receipt, the code on the receipt and the code on the item are two different things. So therefore I couldn't make an exchange or get my money back. When I asked, how is that possible? They said, well, the code on the receipt is an item that is still in store. The code on your item was never purchased. So I said, okay, so that means you probably gave me the wrong item. They said, no, we didn't give you the wrong item. I said, okay, then two things can happen. Either I stole the item, or that you have my item that you never gave me and I already paid for it. They said, well, sir, you didn't purchase the item from this store. I said, okay, if I didn't purchase this item from this store, then how come I have a receipt with a code of an item that is in your store? Long story short, while I'm trying to understand what was going on, I saw two police officers walking in. I did not realize they had called police officers on me. So when I saw the police, I was like, okay, now I get a chance at least to make my case and hopefully, get justice. To my surprise, I shouldn't say to my surprise, but amazingly, the police officers had one thing to say to me. They said, either get out or we will arrest you. And that always sticks with you. And it teaches you a lesson, is that when a person from a certain group makes a claim or protests something, it is seen as expressing one's right. But as a black person, when you make the same claims, it is seen as one, being violent, or two, being too sensitive, or stuff like that. But not all of us here, especially black males, I haven't seen a black male who has walked on the streets and seen a white person coming towards them without a white person either pausing, changing their way, or changing sides, or being in a car and then hearing the click of a car, like car door being locked. So these things are things that happen on a daily basis that unfortunately we are faced with every single day. And just to kind of, I don't know if you have time to talk about the last item, which was to talk about how we deal with it, how it affects us. But I would say probably one of the worst things somebody can do is to ignore and not address racist attitude and behaviors that we get on a daily basis in our workplace, in our sports, like what we do, our hobbies and leisures, is to ignore it, because one, it has a personal cost. Two, it also keeps racism alive in the society. So the one thing that you have to do is you have to address racism. And as I said, two people have same situation. One makes a claim and complains about it. It's seen as expressing one's right. And the black person, when they complain about the same attitude, is seen as being oversensitive about an issue or being violent about it. And that deters people from actually making claims. But that is the worst thing somebody can do, is when they see a racist attitude or racism being at play, and refusing to address it and ignoring it, hoping that it goes away.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to piggyback on that a little bit. What I wanted to say, I mean, Henry talked about in a workplace, basically racism in the workplace. I mean, I've done a lot of interpreting for doctors, for medical officers and things like that. What always, ticks me off is when you do like an interpretation job, right? And then later on, come to find out, a nurse or a doctor is saying that making a comment, to management or something about your tone, that your tone should have been softer. I mean, this is just, it's amazing how can my tone be any softer? I mean, this is how I speak. And basically you have to actually interpret the way the LEP is saying. So if you do that, then, they said that your tone is not soft. It's just this whole narrative of the angry black person. You know what I'm saying? So you're angry or you're doing this, you're doing that. So like Henry said, when you come in, these people complain, oh yeah, they're expressing their rights. But then you say something, oh yeah, you're being violent now, or you are
aggressive,
riot or things like that. So it's just everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. That happens every day, and I hear about it and I see it. And like Brian said, and there are a lot of white women who has black kids and who are struggling with how to teach their kids and how to help their kids be safe out there, because this is something new to them, something that they don't know how to deal with. And I think that would be a very nice topic for next time to discuss. But we're going to run out of time here. We'll just go back around the table. And the last question would be, what are the things, Brandon, I'll start with you. What are the things that you're doing to help make changes? I mean, I know some of the things that you've done, but tell us what you're doing to make changes, and what do you say to people who may be listening to you right now?
I think my response to that would be, connected to something that Henry just said, which is given the benefit of the doubt. As black men, I'm very rarely given the benefit of the doubt, even with people that I have come to believe in and trust. It's that deep. So in education, it shows up in many ways, especially in the classroom, when a black boy is told to calm down or stop talking or to pay attention, when there's 10 other students in the room doing the exact same thing, or to lower your voice, you're being too loud when there's 3 other students that are speaking with the same diction and the same voice level. No, I didn't do that, when something happens in the classroom and a black student, and it actually starts to rub off on other students, where they find out that they can scapegoat the black boy in the classroom. They can say, oh, miss whatever, hey, look, it was Jamal, right? And the question of benefit of the doubt is never really there. And so part of the work that I do, have done in the past in education is around working with teachers, working with principals, working with educators to address bias, prejudice, racism within the classroom, is to address the disproportionate discipline. When, students in Minneapolis public schools were suspended 10 times more, black male students were suspended 10 times more than white students overall, and 5 to 6 times more for the same offenses. We have a systemic problem. And so part of my work in education is to address those systemic issues from a larger level, and also to provide kind of some tools, resources, professional development to people on the ground, to our educators on the ground that are doing the everyday work many of whom are beautiful souls that have a lot to offer and very skilled teachers. But there is also that element of internal bias and racism that is woven into our very society, as you put it, Bolo. And so we have to dismantle that. And so I'm doing that through a number of ways. I'm trying to do that work through a number of ways in education. Another thing is through my work with Wildflower Schools, supporting Black and Indigenous teachers in terms of opening their own Montessori schools. I believe that Montessori is a type of education that allows particularly students of color to be themselves and to learn on their own in an environment prepared for them. And that simultaneously coupled with supporting Indigenous and Black educators, owning that education and that experience for that community, to me is a very powerful example of some of the work that I do. And then just raising my daughters, that's a key for me, being highly involved in their education, in their experiences as Black girls, and just doing my best with them to tell them the truth, and then protect them with armor, from the truth, which is a duality that is another thing that we have to deal with.
That's beautiful, and the poem that you wrote and read for your daughter on Facebook on her birthday made me cry.
It made me cry too. And that's another thing. Let's be, can we be vulnerable?
Yes.
It made me cry as well. Thank you.
What are you going to tell to people that are watching you right now, like briefly?
I would say this is a moment, like I said earlier, this is a moment I believe for redefinition. And it doesn't matter what values you have, what background you come from, what skin color. This is a moment where, as humans, our spirits are calling to be intertwined, and for us to take that and decide and define for ourselves what the future is going to look like for human beings on this planet. And I just want to encourage everyone to lean into that calling and find purpose in this moment.
Thank you so much, Brandon. Brilliant contribution, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Malik, the question is to you now. What are you doing to make changes, and what do you want to tell the people that are watching us right now?
Okay, well, what I'm doing personally is I'm trying to be a positive social change factor in this country. Now, I've written something because people have to get involved in this, in a public policy and try to change it. If we want this thing to actually work in everybody's favor, we have to be involved as far as public policy is concerned. Because this is about a nation that is skating on privilege. So, this side has privilege and they want to keep it. So it's up to us to do something. Because there's this quote by Vandergrift, and in essence, he was saying that if an organization has had a long history of success based on certain assumptions about itself and its environment, it is unlikely to challenge or re-examine those assumptions. Even if the assumptions are brought to consciousness, the members of the organization are likely to want to hold on to them because they justify the past and are the source of their pride and esteem. So we have to get involved in a way that we can change those. I'm writing. Actually, my dissertation is on Islamophobia, which is a microcosm of what's happening to African Americans, to Blacks in America. So try to raise awareness on all these policies that are against us. And then what I want to say to actually the larger community is, don't just let Black people fight the fight, because this is everybody else's fight. So if you see something and you don't say anything because it doesn't touch you or it doesn't affect you in a certain way, I mean, this is what's bringing everything really together as far as riots, as far as all this thing is concerned, because of threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So we have to work together. We have we have to talk. We have to do everything. And in that way, I really admire Bolo and Henry, because you guys are so involved in everything, all these actions, like doing everything, like that's just something I admire. I cannot do it like that, but I can write. That's what I'm doing right now to try to raise awareness about that. So I just want to thank everybody for listening, and yeah, that's it.
And thank you so much, Malik. I can't wait to read your thesis. I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. And thank you for being with us. And you are doing something, because when I called you the last minute, you dropped everything, you and Henry, and came to join me. And I know you are doing a lot, so continue to do it. And thank you so much. And I am so pleased that I had you here today. Henry, the question is to you now. What are you doing to make changes, and what do you say? We are running out of time. Just do it in 2 minutes, and we'll be wrapping up now.
All right, so I'll hopefully then just quickly say what I have to say. At first, I'm working on myself first, because as you may know, racism or injustice or social injustice has been so prevalent that we have internalized our own oppression. We have internalized our own self-hate. And so, of course, before I do anything, I need to educate myself on what it is first, to understand what it is, especially with the covertness of racism. I do need to understand what it is first. And once I understand what it is first, then I can recognize it, acknowledge it, then address it. And then once I understand it, acknowledge what it is, and know what it is, and be able to understand what it is so I can address it, I also reach out to others to help educate others as well, or together educate ourselves in order to understand what racism it actually is. Mm-hmm. And how do we recognize it when we see it, and what should we do when we see it? And when we see racism and acknowledge and recognize it, we need to first acknowledge, then we need to address it, and we need to ask questions as uncomfortable as they may be. And again, when you're having a conversation about race, it doesn't get uncomfortable. That means you are being politically correct, or you are not addressing the real issues. And we need to ask uncomfortable questions of our leaders, of our organizations, of our workplace, of the system, and wherever it is. Because as Malik says, injustice itself is not just affecting the person who is the victim of the injustice. It is affecting everybody. Like Paulo Freire says, injustice takes away humanity. Not just of the oppressed. The oppressor himself or herself loses humanity, right? The person or the people who stand in front of injustice and do nothing are also losing their humanity. So it is in the best interest for everybody to stand up against injustice so that everybody gets their justice, because justice is a necessity for humanity. Thank you for having me over, and I appreciate the opportunity that I have had to express myself and be part of this discussion. Thank you.
That's a brilliant answer, Henry, and I love it that you said that educating yourself. If you're not educated about something and you don't know anything about it, you cannot do anything about it. And unfortunately, so many people are so close-minded right now, don't want to open up to education. That's why they don't know what it is, the racism that is going on around. They don't know what the people who are oppressed, what they're going through. Therefore, they're not ready to help. They're not ready to make changes. They're not ready to do something. And that's why we have this show. This show is here to help educate, to help open up minds, to help make changes. And when you're ignorant, you don't know something, you just keep doing ignorant things. And you may be a good person, you may be not racist, but when you're ignorant, you're gonna act racist, you're gonna act like an ignorant. So educate yourself, learn, and when we all know, we'll do better. And thank you so much, all of you, for being with us. And Brandon, thank you so much for coming here today. Malik, thank you so much. Henry, thank you so much. And
Thanks
Malik
for
Sal, thank you for the show. Make sure you buy the Body Butters by Bolo. Thank you.